going to be talking about pitching, and for some of us, it's a really really scary thing. So we're going to talk about not going from 0 to 100. We're going to talk about going from 0 to 1. Before we get into it and we talk about pitching and how we can actually align ourselves to pitch, Martin, explain to people where they can get hold of you.
So the best place to get hold of me is on LinkedIn, Tim. It is the only place I have time in social media. And if you want to find me, I'm Martin Barnes. And if you want to clarify which Martin Barnes, I'm the only one that wrestles crocodiles. So I have that in my profile.
Right. And we will get you on another time to talk about crocodile wrestling at some point.
Excellent.
So Martin, give us a very short history of how you got here, because it's actually quite complex, isn't it?
I think like most people, after 22 years of work, you've done a bit of everything. And in mega brief, I did 4 years in London as a graphic designer. Then I went to China for a 2-year contract that turned into 16 years. And then 2019, we come back for 1 month to celebrate Christmas with the family, bring the kids back, have their birthdays. And then we hit 2020 and we're still in the UK. I don't need to explain why. And now I'm in the UK, coming out of Taunton in Somerset, and just trying to connect and help as many people start enjoying pitching.
Because pitching is I'm an introvert, and there's nothing I hate more than standing up in front of people and talking. And how I ended up running a podcast, I don't know. Maybe it was actually the reason why I'm here is actually to get over the fear of doing it and video. So if we, most people haven't ever pitched.
Mm-hmm.
And most people are, and it's, we would rather do something else, like eat our own arm or something like that.
Yeah.
And so how can people get started, and how can you get to the point where you actually start feeling comfortable? Well, not just talking to people, but talking to multiple people.
It's such a common challenge. And I'm sort of sometimes incredibly introverted, and I just want to sort of be by myself and recharge. And then sometimes I love the center of attention, and it's a pendulum that swings. And I think for people who are sort of overthinking it, a sort of recent revelation was reading Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1.
Yeah.
And I love that. As soon as I finished reading it, I went back to the beginning, and I didn't really read it. I listened to it. But as this first listen, I finished it and I just started listening to it again. And I just loved the idea of that 0 to 1 being the hardest thing you can possibly do. Like 1 to 100 is where you've got momentum. And so I was thinking, how can I take that for what I do? And then maybe even take a few steps further back and say, what is 0 to 0.001 or 0.1? And not to get too sort of mathematical, but just the idea of how do we break it down into such a simple, small, manageable task? And once you stack enough of those small challenges, you've then made progress.
Yeah.
And so it's basically, how can we do that in pitching where you don't compare yourself to Steve Jobs or a TED speaker or somebody incredibly charismatic and who just eats up the spotlight? But how can you sort of say, well, I'm me and my goals are different, but I am not going to not achieve my goals because of what I'm telling myself in my head?
Because there's always that people go, oh yeah, you need to watch this so-and-so TED talk. And you watch it and you go, I could never be like that.
Yeah.
How on earth did they come up with that? And I can, and immediately you go, well, I'm not going to do this.
And we almost do that on purpose. We almost sort of go, right, I need to go and get inspiration from the best. And then I have a get out clause where I can be like, well, I'm never going to be as good as them. So why don't I just stay in my current comfort zone? And it's natural to get inspired and to be, to go and find heroes and inspiration and to take that. But if that's your measure and your baseline, then you're really just setting yourself up to, I wouldn't say fail, just to not achieve. And therefore, the cost of not doing it suddenly starts to compound in a really negative way.
Patrick says something really good, which is, Martin, overthinking is the key. Just embrace positive risk like eating or breathing. I read that right. It is just a conversation.
Exactly, Patrick. Thank you so much. It is like the biggest pitch we face is the one in our heads to that inner critic, because their voice is the loudest and we carry them around 24/7 and they're constantly going, you said that wrong, you did that wrong, you haven't brushed your hair, you look a bit scruffy, you haven't shaved. They're constantly like nagging us, and we listen to them. And when we can pitch to that person in our head and tell them to sit down and zip it because you're getting in my way, then it starts to get in, and then you start to get a bit of momentum and a bit of flow. And then you start making very intentional decisions about your environment and your context. And then you suddenly realize, oh, the chains are falling away and I can actually do this. And I've seen it in so many different types of people.
So what do you need to do to get started? Because you run pitch clubs and stuff where, and you where people can come on and obviously make fools of themselves. So what is it that you need to do to get started?
It's a bit like learning to eat healthy or learn a language or, get back in the gym.
Just put it off as long as you can then.
Yeah, just tell yourself it's never going to work. It's like any habit shift, any transformation is just sort of saying, right, I'm going to do it. And there will be some resistance and it will feel a little bit of friction at the beginning, but that is nothing compared to, again, the cost of not doing it. And mentally, you have to connect your head to your body. And then you have to just put yourself in a situation where there are stakes, but no risk. And so you feel it, and that you know that you're in a community with other people who are in the same situation, who are essentially applauding you and willing you to do as best you can. And when you suddenly realize that that's the situation and not what the person in your head was telling you, then you're kind of like, oh, that was easy. Or it was, no, I'm not going to say that was easy. I'm going to say it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Yes. It's the psychological safety of the fact that we're all willing you to do good, because we know that we're probably going to be crapper than you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody who's in the audience actually wants to be where you are. There's a fantastic Seth Godin quote, and I really cannot remember of all the hundreds of books and podcasts and bits of content he's shared. He basically said, you want to be the person on stage because then you're 1 to a multiple, 10, 50, 100, 1,000. And do anything you can to be on stage, because then you're amplifying your message. If you're in the audience, you're lost in a crowd.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's super powerful. And so I have this sort of mantra of like, never say no to the stage.
Yeah.
If somebody says, would you like to present? They obviously believe you have the skills.
Yep.
And their reputation is at stake. And they wouldn't put you on stage if they thought you were going to fail. So they believe in you. And take that energy and step off it to find your own momentum.
So you talked about that the first pitch was probably something like 65,000 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. So I have this wonderful story I tell myself, because I'm not an archaeologist or a scientist or a historian, but I see those cave paintings, and to me, they're the world's first ever pitch. And they exist for a reason. Somebody crawled into that cave and created that because they wanted to communicate an idea to somebody else. And they must have gone and gathered the rest of the nomadic tribe, pulled them in, organized them, quietened them down, and told them a story that captivated their imagination and used those visuals to help transfer the idea from their head to the heads of the community. Now, is that right or wrong? I have no idea, but it has to be somewhere related to that, because why would you do it otherwise? Unless it's literally like, I have artistic expression that I need to release. So to me, we've been using slides forever. At the moment, in our current iteration, they are in software and they come in a sequence, and you can add images and pictures and formatting and animations and all that sort of stuff. Back where it started, they were on a wall, but I imagine they moved a fire across the cave wall to illuminate different elements. So
tell a story.
Yeah, but a visual storytelling and the atmosphere and the mood and the lighting from the fires and the imagination of the people and the experiences and all those common things came together. And we're doing it right now. It's through the luxury of the internet. And whether before the pandemic we all used to get in a room together and do it. And so it's in this constant evolution. And I think that's one of the timeless, and that's why we should all do it, because it's in our DNA. And if we don't do it, we're not contributing to the fact that we're all spinning on this rock flying through space. I mean, we're getting whoa right now, but we have
I think that we actually have. Well, when I was I think we kind of had it beaten out of us at some point, because at some point we moved to this way of writing where you say, I'm a results orientated, tenacious, highly energetic, which is utter rubbish. Whereas actually if you talk to anybody, I believe that everybody has a story. And once you get it out of them, we go, oh wow, that isn't it? Wow, you lived in China for 16 years, and we actually had a conversation. I was immediately straight in. God, what was it like? Because I've been to China a couple of times, and immediately, we spent 10-15 minutes talking about you being in China, because for me that was fascinating. And there was you told a whole story about it. We don't have time to go into that because that's not what today's about, but. By the way, if you ever get to talk to Martin, ask him about it. Yes. And it is fascinating because there is that story. And so my point being is how do we pull that story out of people to get them to relax and breathe and say, well, actually, I was in China for 16 years. And
exactly, yeah, it's allowing, it's recognizing that every piece of communication is a stage. And so we're on a digital stage right now. Yeah. My stage right now is actually my kid's bedroom, because it's the only place that has a nice, simple wall.
Yeah.
And whether we're sharing a story one-on-1, 1 on 10, 1 on 50, 1 on 100, there are all these moments where, we don't need information. There's a wonderful expression in a book by Dan and Chip Heath called TBU. And the acronym stands for True But Useless. And it basically means that people get attached to the stuff that is technically correct, but in this current moment and context doesn't really add to achieving the common goals. And so we can get stuck in really technical rabbit holes, and now more than ever, right? And so to sort of realize that, okay, I'm actually talking to you, and there is something that I don't need to start at the beginning chronologically because we don't have time. I need to get to the meat fast because we have these amazing pocket computers that can distract us in a second.
Yeah, and they do.
Oh my goodness. But we have to tell the why and the how and the who and the what and the where of why we're here right now. And that's our story.
So you went through previously, there was 5 points to get started. Do you want to rattle through those?
Yeah.
Or shall I remind you what they are?
You remind them of me.
Okay, right. 5 points. First, pictures are in your head.
Yep. So it's that idea that you're gonna have to pitch yourself. You see people with huge amounts of confidence because they're constantly telling themselves they can do this. That doesn't mean that they ever doubt themselves, but the voice of confidence is louder than the voice of doubt. And you have to believe in yourself, and you have to know that failure is okay. And this all sounds like cliches right now. It sounds like I'm just reading a stream of motivational quotes. But every cliche is true because it is a universal truth. And we just have to take it, mold it, and give it our own shape and form. And then it gives us power. It stops being, really generic and starts being really individual.
Realization is in your DNA.
Yes, because we've been listening to stories as kids, and I watch my children, 5-year-old twins, run around right now. They're making up games. They're telling each other the rules. They were playing with their friend tag, and then all of a sudden, you can't tag me because my feet are off the ground, and you can't tag me because I made the game up. And they're just like spontaneously creating stories about the game. And if we assess them, they're not very good stories when we're looking at them through adult eyes. But as kids, they fuel the hours they have together to play. And so we forget that, and we should revisit that and know that stories aren't that complicated, and that we have been telling them since the caves, and we've been listening to them since we were kids. We just need to get the basic Lego blocks back and then start to play with them.
Okay, number 3 is how to get started.
It's just to find a space where you do not feel the pressure, but you feel the stakes. And so Pitch Club, which we've mentioned, is a weekly event that I host where people can come and pitch and give a 3-minute pitch. There are 5 3-minute pitches. We have an audience of normally around 14, 15 people, which means you have 14 or 15 people giving an hour of their time. So there is an audience and there's stakes, but there are no investors or managers or bosses that are going to give you, a bad appraisal or remove your promotion. So you're not going to lose anything by not doing as good as you think.
Yeah.
But you're going to benefit because you're going to feel it.
Yeah, and often the worst pitch or the most scary pitch is doing one internally, because the one internally might not mean that you lose the business, but it could mean that you lose your job.
Exactly. Because that internal audience is super familiar with you, and they're bringing all that history with them. So they're there.
So number 4 is core structure.
You've got to follow a path, because every story has this 3-act play, whether it's a Chinese story, an Arabic story, a Western story, whatever culture it comes from. And if you just jump in, it's a bit like telling a joke. If you're in a crowd of friends, you start telling a joke and you realize you've lost what? And everyone's like, oh, that was rubbish. So you do need to follow a certain pattern, and you need to have momentum, and you need to hit certain beats. But it's so learnable because it has gone through time, through every age of man or woman, civilization. So we can follow the structure. We just need to sort of see it, play with it, learn it, break it, and then use it. So we
I guess and number 5 is practice. And I guess your pitch club is a great. I'm assuming people can come and listen.
100%. So anybody can come. It's a completely ground floor event. The doors are wide open. Anybody can pitch, and we've had
or listen,
or just listen. We have people who just sit listening and give a little bit of feedback, and so we have 4 rounds of feedback per pitch. So you get you can absorb a lot by watching people demonstrate. And we have a lot of people, and we celebrate your streak, your consistency. So we have someone who's on 30 pitches, someone who's on 28, someone who's on 14, and they are literally coming and chipping away at their performance. And some people are really working on what they say. Some people are really working on how they say it.
Yeah.
And we've seen people come up and like really choke at the beginning, like not even get through it and almost disappear. And then 8 pitches later, you're like, you're a different person. Just practice. It's amazing.
I guess it's a bit like, for those in the UK, Strictly Come Dancing, which is where you get, these celebrities at the beginning who have got 2 left feet and then the ones that get through as they get to the final, they're dancing like the professionals, and it's just down to practice.
Working. I learned this recently. I hope we've got time for it. I'm going to squeeze it in. It is the zone of proximal development.
Yeah.
Educational parlance for you do better in the company of people just a little bit ahead of you.
Yes.
And so young kids play better with older kids because they learn. So in pitching and dancing, if you're working with someone who's a little bit better than you, then you raise your game, and you do that in a really supportive, scaffolded way where you're not exposed, but you're insulated and you rise up together. It's really amazing to see, because you go, everybody can do this. Everyone can start that journey from 0 to 1.
I remember I remember in my teens, I used to play badminton, and playing against the adults and losing. I didn't like it to begin with, and then I realized I actually learned more by why did he play that? Oh, and then actually my game got better by losing.
Yeah. There were so many times I wish I could go back to those teenage years and go, this is the really important bit. Don't let your ego get in the way. Yeah, I'm there.
So you have a book out as well, don't you? Which is the A to Z of pitching.
Yep, here is.
How can people get that?
I actually have 1 or 2 physical copies made. So this is what it looks like inside.
I've read it.
Yeah. And I have a digital version, ebook and Kindle, and it's on Gumroad.
Right.
Yeah. So we have actually a promotion. We talked about doing a promotion. So I have some copies that we can give away to your audience. So if let's say we give 3 copies to, what should we ask people to do, Tim? What can be our...
Oh, I don't know. We haven't prepared this.
Why don't someone who takes a screenshot of right now, or some sort of evidence of right now, puts it into LinkedIn, and then tags you and me.
Yeah.
If 3 people do that, I'll send them a link to the book, and they can get it for free.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's a nice gift up to Christmas.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
The A to Z, it's the pitching A to Z, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to write a book, but I was quite daunted by the thought of writing a sort of what we consider a book on a shelf. So I decided to go and use 2 of my superpowers, which is sketching and pitching.
Yeah.
Each, and I wanted a structure to follow. We were talking about structure, so I was like, A to Z, I have to come up with 26 insights. And then people, when they're reading it, they know where they are. And I've got the pitching A to Z. I'm doing public speaking A to Z, slide design A to Z, and sketching A to Z. So it'll be a quadrilogy of books.
A quadrilogy. That's amazing.
Yeah. And basically get from 0 to 1. Like, just get that initial mindset shift from a very quick book to read to get you in the spotlight, and then you'll be off to the races.
So Martin, thank you so much for coming on today. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
All on LinkedIn, 100% LinkedIn. So Martin Barnes, startup pitch coach, crocodile wrestler is my handle. And please come and say hello. You're better off talking to me on LinkedIn than email. And I post twice a day, and I just like to share sketches and pitching tips, and really like to meet people on LinkedIn because it's where we have our professional lenses. So yeah,
and remind people how they can get your book by screenshot, tagging you and me.
Yeah. So take a screenshot right now, and then paste that into LinkedIn, and then you at Martin Barnes, at Tim Hughes. We'll see it, and then I will connect. We'll connect. Make sure we're all connected, and then I will send you a link to my book, absolutely free.
Excellent. Martin, thank you so much for coming on, especially as it's only a couple of days before Christmas.
It's been great,
and wish you and your family a happy Christmas.
And thank you likewise. Have a fantastic festive season.
Thank you.
And see you in the